Who exactly are the titular Maidens of Blackwater? If you didn't laugh at that pun, then you're a better person than me. But in all seriousness, one of my personal favourite aspects of Maiden of Blackwater was, of course, the Maidens of Blackwater. But who are they? What role do they play on Mount Hikami? And why are they always so moist? Let's take a look. In short, the Maidens of Blackwater are all the shrine maidens you come across in the 5th game. They lived on Mount Hikami, and there carried out numerous practices and rituals related to the Mount Hikami religion. Water was deified on the mountain, believed to be both the source of life and where people would return to after death. The waters on Mount Hikami were especially sacred, so the shrine maidens spent a lot of time training in and near it. Because they were always wet, this led to the name Nuregarasu no Miko. Nuregarasu roughly translates to wet crow, but here it signifies the look of the maiden's wet hair. It glistened black, like that of a wet crow. By constantly immersing themselves in the waters of Mount Hikami, the shrine maidens, women who were chosen because of their closeness to death already, would become even more tied to the other side. By getting closer to death, as Olse once said, it is possible to know everything. The waters strengthened their already existing powers and brought them closer to death, and it was this that allowed them to perform their duties on the mountain. Perhaps the most important of all being their duty to glance someone before they died. Glancing, or mitori in Japanese, was when a maiden looked into a person's soul, touched their spirit at the moment of death, and thus took on their memories, their emotions, their sins, and their secrets. This would help ease their passing and allow them to fully return to the waters from whence they came. The strongest maidens could glance simply by looking at a person from a distance, while others would need physical touch to complete the job. As such, the maidens took to wearing veils over their eyes, only removing them when the time came to glance someone's final moments. The idea for glancing came to Shibata because of something he claimed to personally experience. Making the Fatal Frame games can be particularly tough on him, and the longer development goes on, the more he can fall into a pit of mental and physical exhaustion. It was during these times, Shibata claimed, that his mind would suddenly clear and his senses become almost inhumanly sharp. At its most enhanced, he claimed that he could not only sense the presence of people this way, but he could even hear what they were thinking too. An encounter with an old woman on a train who seemed to realize what Shibata could do, who then invited him to join their order, panicked him, but the idea stuck around. The fact that there might be a group of people out there who could see into others' minds, who could go through rigorous training to do so, who were connected to the other side through death, so to speak, became the basis for the shrine maidens in the game. So, the women who entered Mount Hikami to become shrine maidens would take on the surname Mikomori, which was also the name of a pond or lake at the foot of the mountain. The kanji used for this name means water and either cage or prison. Take from that what you will. They would spend time purifying themselves in the pool of purification, a place that would unfortunately become significant for many maidens further down the line, and then undergo the harsh training required to bring their mitori abilities up to snuff. Over time, the burden of taking on so many memories, secrets, and sins would become too much for a shrine maiden to bear, and so she too would have to return to the waters of Mount Hikami. However, being a shrine maiden also gave her a special role after death, or perhaps more accurately, right before it. When a shrine maiden realized her time was coming, and she could no longer bear her burden, she would enter a black box full of black water and be submerged somewhere on the mountain. This would help strengthen the seal on the mountain that kept the black waters of the other side at bay. After all, if those black waters were unleashed, then all hell would break loose. First, a shrine maiden would travel to the shrine of the ephemeral, then take a boat to the shrine on the water. There, she would be placed in a box appropriately sized for her powers, and then carried by a shadow touched to her final resting place. The more powerful a maiden, the larger the box she got, generally so a husband could accompany her to the other side. These ghost marriages would allow a shrine maiden to withstand the black waters for even longer, making her a stronger pillar. Yet, weaker maidens wouldn't last very long before they melted into the waters and faded away, so they were generally placed in boxes just large enough to fit in. And if a maiden didn't want to go in willingly, she would sometimes be forced in, even if she didn't fit. That means exactly what you're no doubt imagining. The strongest maidens, such as Kurosawa Ose, were sunk in the shadow spring itself, while the other maidens were placed strategically throughout the mountain. And unlike the Mikomori surname, the Kurosawa surname was only given to those shrine maidens who played an important part in protecting the shadow spring. One of those was, of course, Ose, but another was the shrine maiden who escaped the Mount Hikami massacre, and went on to become the ancestor of both Kurosawa Dei and Kurosawa Hisoka. At any rate, once a shrine maiden became a pillar, she wouldn't remain so forever. She would eventually melt away into the black waters and, with her powers gone, the seal keeping the black waters back would again weaken. This meant that shrine maidens would constantly have to replace those who moved on. Although, once again, the greater the shrine maiden, the greater she could hold out. By the time the 5th game takes place, 2005, Ose has been holding out as a great pillar for almost 100 years, but even she is nearing her limit. The shrine maidens were all wiped out that fateful day that Kururugi Kyozo visited the mountain to seemingly end his own life. There were rumors that he was actually in love with one of the shrine maidens, yet they may have just been that. Rumors. Yet the real blame for his visit to Mount Hikami that day perhaps lies in the loss of his sister, Shino. She hung herself on the mountain after Kururugi killed her lover, under the pretense of protecting her. Kururugi then visited the mountain as well, perhaps to take his own life in sadness. But upon realizing the shrine maiden would see all of his dirty little secrets, he had a change of heart, and at the last moment, ran. He then returned and resolved he would kill every single shrine maiden on the mountain, because clearly that was the only sane course of action to take, and he did just that. Well, almost. Ose was being prepared to become a great pillar by the Shadow Spring at the time, and of course, the woman who would later become the ancestor to both Rei and Hisoka also managed to escape. But he killed everyone else, and the bodies of many of those maidens floated downriver to end up in the pool of purification, that holy place they used to cleanse themselves in. This sudden massacre greatly affected Ose and her ritual preparations, and the pain of so many deaths at once overwhelmed her, causing the ritual to fail and the black waters to burst forth. They drenched the mountain, and the spirits there were corrupted, tied to the land and forced to haunt it seemingly forevermore. The ghosts of these corrupted shrine maidens carried on, continuing their duties, but now they would spirit women away to place in black boxes in a futile attempt to seal the mountain, or kidnap men and force them into ghost marriages that would inevitably fail, causing numerous deaths and disappearances. Throughout the game, you'll come across many of these corrupted maidens. One is the Pale Mistress, or Kagome as she's known in Japanese. These are the maidens who were sunk in the Shadow Spring and have been waiting for a ghost marriage partner to help ease their pain. After the massacre, these women turned into vengeful spirits who seek out other women with strong abilities like their own, capturing them to place into black boxes. A Pale Mistress captures Miyu in the prologue of the game. Another possesses Hisoka, and one even comes to Yuri in her dreams and pulls her into a black box. Then there are the Guardians, or, as they're known in this house, not you again, goddammit. These annoying ladies are unique in that they were never placed in black boxes. They would enter the water directly to purify it and to protect a casket, hence their name. You generally come across them one at a time, but there are times where you're forced to fight several, and if given the chance, they will form a circle around you by linking hands, trapping you inside. They can also be found protecting Ulse at the end of the game. Like everyone else, they were also corrupted when Ulse's ritual failed and the Black Waters overflowed. Another type of Guardian is known as the Twisted Guardian, or as I call them, Flop Flop Flop. These were the maidens who didn't want to enter the black boxes and were thus forced inside, generally crushing their limbs in the process. They weren't very powerful to begin with, and often faded quickly. When the Black Waters swarmed the mountain, their boxes opened and they came flopping ungracefully out thanks to their bent and twisted limbs. Now, like the other corrupted maidens, they also try to lead people back to the boxes to refill their stock. There are also a few maidens who are important enough to receive names. There's Mikomori Emi, the maiden who attempted to glance Kururugi in his final moments before he decided against it. She was later brutally killed by him, blinded, and her body left to float down to the pool of purification. Then there was Inori, who was similarly murdered at the same scene and horrifically blinded. Finally, Honoka, a maiden still in training who was not yet powerful enough to glance from a distance, but still required touch to do it. She was stabbed in the back by Kururugi and blinded while still alive. Although technically not a shrine maiden herself, Mikomori Shizuku is also worth a mention here, as she's another descendant of a shrine maiden who escaped the mountain. She used to visit the mountain on rainy days to pray for all the lost lives there, but one day, as she was leaving flowers, her umbrella got caught in a gust and stabbed her in the eye. She is the only non-hostile ghost in the game, and she stands out because of her vivid red umbrella. And that is the story behind the many shrine maidens who live on Mount Hikami, both before and after death. What did you guys think about this one? Are there any other lore videos you'd like to see? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.